Okay, thank you all for coming. A few people still coming in, I'm sure, but we're mostly here, so we're going to get started. We have a very meaty program for you today, so we want to make sure to honor your time. My name is Vicki Connor. I'm past president and co-chair of this event for the Rotary Santa Maria South Club with Terry Lee Coleman, the other co-chair that you've probably heard from during this process. We'd like to introduce a few of our Rotary folks first that helped put this on and are responsible for starting it in the first place. And then we'll introduce some other guests. I'd like to introduce first, you'll hear a little more from her in a moment, but our district governor is Sherry Sim with us today from Rotary. And our club president, Joe Gruba, is here today from Rotary Santa Maria South. And our partner Rotary Club for this event is Rotary Santa Maria Breakfast, and Kate Ferguson is representing the Breakfast Club today. And we have numerous committee members from Rotary that help put this event on. They're listed in your program, and I would like you to look at them, and if you see them and know them, thank them, because everybody's been very helpful. We have some other special guests we would like to introduce. First of all, Santa Barbara County District Attorney John Savernock. Thank you. One of our speakers today, but I would like to recognize her, Megan Reinschild, who is with the DA's office, victim witness office, and also founder of the Human Trafficking Task Force for the county. Under Sheriff Craig Bonner, I believe, is here with us. Joseph Rodriguez, commander of the CHP in the Santa Maria area. Lee Collier, representing Bob Nelson, Supervisor Nelson's office. John Hooten, Executive Director of the Allen Hancock College Foundation. And Tony Guy, who's on the Santa Maria Airport Board, but he's also a Rotarian that was on our committee. And we won't introduce the speakers because they'll all be introduced shortly, but I would like to thank them very, very much in advance. They're all at this table, so I'm looking at them. Especially our survivor speakers. We've found in the past, this is our third event, we've found that there's a great interest in the survivor stories because they're all so unique and so moving, and it's important for us to feature our survivors and the success stories that they represent. So we'd like to really thank those folks.
Thank you so much, Vicki. My name is Sherry Sim, and I'm currently serving as the district governor for Rotary District 5240. Our district covers 4 counties in Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Ventura, and Kern counties. We have a total of about 2,800 members in 68 clubs. So I would like to welcome all of you. Thank you for taking time to be here. We have a wonderful program scheduled. And firstly, a big shout out to the Rotary Club of Santa Maria South for organizing this event. And also thank you to Rotary Club of Santa Maria Breakfast. You and your team put together a very important event. And just want to thank the sponsors as well. I know they will be recognized later. And a much heartfelt thanks to all the speakers, especially the survivors, for sharing your stories with us. Human and sex trafficking is modern slavery, and it is a severe exploitation of others for personal and commercial gain. That is why we need to free those who are trapped in that cycle, because freedom is a basic human right. Collectively, we have a shared responsibility to take action on this issue because the world should be free of human trafficking. Without freedom, individuals and communities cannot achieve basic education, economic development, or peace. Now, Edward Everett Hale, an American minister, said, "I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something, and I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do." I'm sure you heard of that starfish story where a boy helped a starfish. That's the story about the power of one. And Mother Teresa, saint and missionary, stated that human rights are not a privilege conferred by government. They are every human being entitlement by virtue of his humanity. So I'm hoping that together we can take a stand, educate ourselves, raise awareness, support all anti-human trafficking efforts, and join hands to fight this travesty. Again, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here, especially our speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry. We wanted to, as Sherry mentioned, we could not do this event without our sponsors, so we wanted to call your attention to the people that are on the slide and also in the back of your program and on the front page. These are the organizations that have supported us in doing this event, and we're very, very appreciative. We have the McDonald's folks at the front table here, and we have Alan Hancock and Dignity and United Way and the District Attorney's Office and Santa Maria Times and all of the rest of us that are listed on all of the rest of them that are listed on the program have been very, very generous in their support, and we thank them. At this time, it gives us a lot of pleasure to announce or to introduce our keynote speakers today. And as you noticed in the program, the title of the presentation is "Be Prepared, Not Scared," and that was sort of a good title that Carrie Gomes came up with, because she said she wanted to make sure that we aren't just so afraid of the topic that we don't want to look at it or address it. And I think that's an important message for all of us. Some of us have shied away from this topic for a long time, and it is important that we're more educated about it. So with that, I would like to introduce Sergeant Carrie Gomes from the UC Merced Police Department, and Tamara Isaac Cooksey, who's a licensed family marriage and family counselor, or family therapist. I knew I got the last word wrong. Thank you. From UC Merced, and they're going to present our keynote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the Rotary Club for having us. It's an honor to be here. Thank you to all the sponsors. And thank you to these four powerful women. When I read the list, I saw Miss Des Perkins. She was one of the survivors that I heard when I started my journey into learning about HT to be able to protect our students at UC Merced and then our greater University of California. We just got approval yesterday to train every single police officer and detective in the UC system. So we're growing, we're expanding, but Des is one of my heroes. I carry her book with me, I've read it. She's as genuine and as raw as they come. She is absolutely so inspirational. And these four women that you're gonna hear from today are gonna cover human trafficking. We have decided to cover sextortion today. It's a topic that you can Google in the news and read about, but it's impacting lives, and it's a huge, huge lethality risk. And the reason why is our young people are committing suicide left and right. Our teenagers, our babies are having phones at young ages, and this is no way to shame parents who have made that decision. Both of us have a 14-year-old. I have a 14-year-old son. Tamara has a 14-year-old daughter, and we're living and breathing it every day. So this is our journey that we want to share with you. It's impacting students, young babies, all the way to adults, and it's happening to businesses as well, where they are reaching out to businesses and saying, hey, you owe me $10,000, $20,000. We've got cameras installed in your bedroom, and we are going to release all of the intimate videos between you and your partner if you don't give me money. So none of us are exempt from this. None of us are exempt. It does not discriminate for gender, race, age, religion, doesn't matter. And that's what the awareness piece is for. So we're going to go ahead and get started to give our survivors the most time as possible.
Yes.
And I'll have Tamara introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamara Isaac Cooksey. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I used to be a UC Merced campus advocate as well. And so one of the cases that we're going to cover today myself and Sergeant Combs, when she was a detective, we covered this case and several other cases as well that cover human trafficking and sextortion. As she said today, we're going to focus on sextortion in some of our slides, but yes, I do also provide individual, group, and family therapy at UC Merced as a therapist.
So a quick reminder, if you need to take a break, take a break. This stuff does get heavy and sometimes the impact won't hit you till later. So just know if you're feeling overwhelmed, completely normal. These are our 4 ladies we're going to hear from today. Yes. My favorite quote from Des: "I'm a hummingbird, I'm brave, courageous, a fighter, no matter my size." And she will speak her testimony today. So thank you again for being here. And okay, so human trafficking, all of these topics: sextortion, catfishing, cyberbullying, stalking, distribution of intimate photos, videos, which is now known as revenge porn. What you once sent to a partner, you know, a sexy picture or whatever you want to call it, it was between you and that other human. Now there's a breakup, or there's, you know, you made me upset, and they're manipulators. They're going to threaten to send it.
Yes.
And so we recognize that all of these things can go into human trafficking. They can all go into sextortion, and these, it's a huge umbrella. So when you see these terms where there's smoke, there's fire. When there's one thing going on, there's multiple crimes going on as well.
So this is the start of a dark path. The first beginning of that is contact is made between the perpetrator and the survivor. So first they make some type of contact. Usually that's through social media. So it's usually direct messaging, through Instagram, Threads, Snapchat, all the things. And so there's usually something like, "Hey, I know you. Hey, we're on the same softball team. Hey." So that's the first part of trying to get the contact that is made. There's new apps that pop up all the time, especially with dealing with the population we deal with at UC Merced. We're always hearing new things and we're trying to investigate, but it goes rapid. It is fast. Everything happens really fast once that first contact is made. It also happens during video game chats. It can happen so much so that your teen or your young adult may be playing a video game in the family room, and it could be happening. Because what are we doing? We're cooking, we're washing dishes, we're going in and out, and they're just looking like they're playing on the video game, and first contact can start happening. Also, there's Discord. They use that a lot at UC Merced for studying and some of the other college campuses. And so even teachers will refer students to use Discord to study. And sometimes it can happen through that. There's Google Hangouts, school chat rooms. And what they do is they do a little bit of play on words. They'll say something like, my daughter goes to Atwater High School. So they'll say, Atwater High cheer palms. So it'll just be a little word that they'll change and shift. They may not even be affiliated with the school, but they've changed that one little word. Also, online chat groups that appear to be affiliated with the survivor, like I said, the Santa Maria Gamers, the Rigetti Pom Pom Girls, St. Joe's, all these things, just to get some familiarity so that our team can start to feel like, oh yeah, this is no big deal.
Just a word about those schools. Whose team San Luis Obispo County? Oh, just my mom. Okay. I was thinking of the high schools that we played in volleyball, that we beat them every year in league when it, just 20 years ago. But yeah, so it's going to be something that looks familiar.
Yes.
Where, you're just scrolling, you're not even really paying attention, and one of our children or even adults can click on this link, and then before you know it, you just have that trust. Oh, it's all people from Rigetti. Yeah. What's the harm in this? It's people from St. Joe's. Like, Yeah. You're not really paying attention. So that's kind of the point of this one. Really look at who you're following and who you allow to follow you and your children. So grooming and preparation. Swiss cheese is the favorite way that I explain it to our students or to anybody. All of us are a piece of Swiss cheese. And what that means is we all have holes. So if I were to give you a piece of paper and a pen and I said, what are you insecure about? None of us feel perfect about our body, about our career, about our family life, about our marriage. You name it, none of us feel absolutely secure. There's always something we wish we could change when we look in the mirror. Now, go back to the days when we were 10, 11, 12, where we are uncomfortable, we're nervous, we're trying to fit in. Every single one of us went through that phase. We're awkward, we're shy. So let's say we have a 11-year-old little girl. She might be a little overweight, maybe have some acne starting. And these traffickers and these manipulators, exploiters, whatever we're going to label them, they're going to come in and fill in that hole of Swiss cheese. So
Yes.
if I'm looking at Kate, I'm like, oh, baby girl, I love that body. Your curves, you're beautiful. The word beautiful makes me sick because what I do is I go undercover at UC Merced. I have 4 different accounts that I portray of being a student, and every single one of them, hey, beautiful, hey, gorgeous,
Good
hey,
morning.
beautiful, good morning. That's the word they use because as women, we want to be called beautiful. That's the one word I never want to be called, but that's how they do it. And so whatever that thing to exploit, they're going to sense it out like a shark, and that's what they portray to these young kids. If that same 11-year-old girl goes on her Instagram and she's like, ugh, I hate my mom, or she puts something depressing, guess who's looking through all these looking for kids? Oh, what do you mean? You don't need your mom. You don't need to listen to her. We can do this. We can do that. So they come in and they just smooth it right over.
Absolutely.
And if we as adults are insecure about something, you can only imagine going back to 6th, 7th, 8th grade of what that looks like. The first trafficker I ever arrested, I asked him, I said, help me be a better investigator, whether he's being truthful or not, who cares? The point is, what he said was, you need to start at age 10. And I said, why age 10? He's like, that's when it's at. That's where it's at. I'm like, okay, and where at? He's like, foster homes. I go, why? He's like, well, they got nowhere to go but up.
No one's paying attention.
That's it. That's what you're going to do. And so I had my body camera on the table and I said, okay, you have a 10-year-old daughter. What would you say to someone trying to go after her? And he leaned into the body camera and he's like, get their ass, get them. Excuse my language. But that's how they talk. And so I said, okay, but he himself had done over 12 years in prison for trafficking a 12-year-old girl. And then he pandered me as a UC Merced student. So they know young, 10 years old,
Yes.
from the advice of a trafficker, when to start. The other ways I'm going to have Tamara cover, this is especially for teenagers, is that fast, cash, glamorous
Yes.
lifestyle of what they want to look like.
So again, the suspect will align with similar hobbies, friends, spaces, the familiarity, knowing the area. Because of course, in social media, and I think even Des mentioned, these young people put everything on. They check in everywhere. And so people can just look at their status or look and see where they are and make that an aligned comfort between them and the survivor. So they also make false promises. Video promotion, like, oh, we can do this. You're so beautiful. I love that. I love how you're wearing that. I love all this about you. It's the flattery. And when there's a male survivor that is like, yeah, you working out? You getting it? You in the gym? Yeah, So it's trying to get that camaraderie there. There also can be some trafficking and some sextortion that can start within the nightclub setting when people are getting the 18, oh, you're 18 now, you could go out, or trying to, especially on our campus, underage drinking, trying to do things like that. That's what opens the door, because then it's affiliated with guilt and shame. So of course, the modeling, the dating website, normalizing selfies. So we all do it all the time. And so the perpetrator will normalize that. Send me a selfie. That's how it starts. Just a little bit of honey. Send me that. So normalizing FaceTime, but very quick. Everything happens super quick. It's like, because obviously if I FaceTime you real quick, you see me flash over the screen, but then I hang up, oh, my connection's bad, something's bad. What is the young person usually telling themselves? Oh, I know them. I just FaceTime them. Not taking into account, that was 2 seconds, a few seconds. And then obviously webcam access, which we'll talk about in our case later.
Okay. So we're going to start down the path of sextortion specific. This happens within seconds, and it can start on Snapchat, it can start on Instagram, it can start on a Tinder dating site. You think you're talking to a date. Do our teenagers lie when they're 16 years old and say they're 18, and are they on dating sites? Yes, they are. Every student we contact, they've been on dating sites for years. And this is all stuff that as parents we want to pretend it doesn't happen. It does. So we want you to be aware of it. But essentially it's, starts off with an innocent photo, and then it's, okay, what was common at our campus right now is because of the financial aspect, they're going after our young men, our boys.
Yes.
Especially our gay and homosexual young males, where that it's a guy, hey, you're cute, blah, 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 here's a picture of my junk, you send one of yours, and it's with literally, I mean, within 30 seconds. Boop, boop, here comes the photos. And once they have that photo, all they have to do is go into the internet and Google the student's name. And then they see their contact list, their friends, their family, the chancellor of UC Merced, their mom, their dad. And then what do they need to go next? And all of us can do it. You need to do it today. Google yourself after the class of what's open there. And it's all of your address, everywhere you've ever lived, your phone numbers, your emails, your relatives, your associates, truepeoplesearch.com, fast people search. Just type it in, and there's countless of them. Yes, you can pay to have it removed, but new sites pop up daily. So anytime you're paying a bill, anytime you're filling out a mailer, it's there. And it's a nightmare, it's a pain, but there are sites you can pay to subscribe. So they will go with, oh, here's a screenshot. This is your mom. This is your dad. Oh, you play track and field in high school, and now you're at UC Merced, and you're in the blah, blah, blah club. And what happens is immediately students panic, absolutely sheer terror. And you'll hear from our case of what he did to one of our female students. With our females, we're seeing it still more. They want production of nude photographs, nude videos. The bigger, greater threat in sextortion with our juveniles is, okay, go touch your little sister. Produce more, which we used to call child pornography. It's now child sexual abuse material, CSAM, you'll hear that term. So that is like unbelievably sick to think about, but I want you to have the reality, okay? So if my son is 14 years old and he sends a photo, he thinks he's chatting with a 16-year-old girl, she shows her breasts, okay, here's my penis, screenshot, boop. Now he's gonna Google my son's name, then what's gonna happen? My mom is gonna pop up, my dad's gonna pop up, his dad, mine, all the social media, his baseball, everywhere he plays, his stats, you name it, his coaches. So you can imagine all of us probably have an embarrassing photo, maybe not necessarily nude at our ages, maybe not, but the point is, if that ugly picture you have of yourself, or that one you just look so terrible, you don't want it online, you don't post it, you have it for whatever reason, that post gets sent to every single person in your contact list. Just that alone, you're like humiliated. So now imagine it being a nude image or a video, and that's what sextortion is. So once that happens, they will screenshot it. So we'll use my son's screenshot of him in his nude image, and then they will text it back to him and say, unless you send, and right now we're seeing, UC Merced, it's usually around 500, but I've seen up to 1,000. A couple of months ago, I had a young man spend $8,000 within 30 minutes. He drained his financial aid. And he was panicking because he's like, I have to tell my parents, I have no money to survive. And we're like, okay, it's okay, come on in, let's get you taken care of. And the immediate thing that we are looking at is suicide. And we hit it head on. Okay, right now your whole life is in just chaos, and I'm here with you. And you just sit with them and you talk to them. So if it happens to someone you know, that's what we care about, taking their life. The rest we'll figure out. We will go through it as law enforcement. Not every single person wants to report to law enforcement either. We have to acknowledge that. Some families, some people, for their own reasons, don't feel safe reporting to law enforcement. That can't be the only option. But what do we do? What do we not do? Okay, so this is just showing the Facebook contacts and threatening to expose it.
So then they become very relentless and aggressive. They start to demand the money, the gift cards. They ask for Cash App, Zelle, Venmo, Apple Pay. Suspect will make it feel urgent. Like we said, it's very fast. Like Sergeant Gomes was saying, they send the picture back to the victim, and then they're like, hey, pay me. I want the money. What are you doing? I know all your contacts. I've screenshotted like she showed on the Facebook. And so it happens really, really fast. They order them to go to the bank account. And sometimes they want to be on seeing all the information that they're typing in. Countdown towards exposure. That's very, very big. Like you have until Friday. The client that we will talk about in the afternoon, in the latter part, she mentioned that she started missing class. She wasn't even able to concentrate. She wasn't going to class because he would put a timeline on by noon today. Or I'm going to contact the chancellor. And so,
Okay, we talked about the victim or the suicide prevention, but victim blaming. Our immediate thought as a parent might be like, I've told you 5,000 times. I've made you watch these documentaries. You sit with me in the living room. Every sextortion article that comes out, you read it with me. I talk about this with your baseball teammates. Like, how could you do this? That might be in our head. We don't say that.
Do not say
we do
that.
not victim blame. We do not. What they need to hear is, baby, I don't care. I love you. Let's face it, when we were all growing up, our first sexual encounter was with a human body next to us, okay? We didn't have Snapchat and all this stuff. It was face to face. Our kids today, it's online. That's most likely their first sexual experience is online. So we have to normalize it even though we don't want to. In that moment, we have to say,
Yes.
it's okay. It's okay. I know you're panicking, but mom's here, dad's here. We're gonna get you through this, okay?
Yes.
Acknowledging how embarrassing it is.
Yes.
Tell them, we all have a private part. Yes, if they send it to your teacher, it's gonna suck. It's not gonna be fun. But your teacher loves you, cares you, they're gonna delete it. They're not gonna use that photo for harm. So assuring them of this common sense stuff, because we do not want them to take their lives. And these are conversations you need to have tonight, tomorrow, the next day. We don't wait until it happens because it's just going to.
We have to be proactive in how we respond.
Okay. The other thing that you can do is start deleting the child's contacts so we minimizing the damage of what it is sent to, the amount of people. All right. Go ahead, Dee.
What to do, what not to do. Do not send money or more photos. There should be no more communication with the perpetrator at all. Screenshot the text or the information that they've asked you to send. Block them immediately. Ensure that your child's account becomes private. Do not delete your child's account. Do not delete, just make it private. So it's no longer public, but do not delete it because that may be used for evidence if the child doesn't want to go forward with pressing charges or the family. Do not make any threats at all with the perpetrator. And remember always that this is the family's process. It doesn't have to be like Sergeant Gomes reporting to law enforcement or working with an advocate, but it has to be a joint process to support our survivors.
And do not threaten to take the child's phone as much as we want to. We're like, I told you you're not responsible enough for this, because that is their whole lifeline, and that is gonna really, really make them crumble hard and fast. Okay, we're gonna go into our case study. Fictitious name, Alondra. She came to the police department. She was on tinychat.com. I've never heard of it before, but there's a million of them that pop up.
Yes.
Essentially, she truly was just doing math. She's a very, very smart young lady. And this started happening in May. She came to us in November, so for 6 months.
Yes.
As soon as she got on there, this guy named Larry, who she had seen his face and interacting. It's not just a picture, so she believes it's a real human named Larry. Perfect. And says, hey, you're really smart. Why don't you help me facilitate this group math chat? Yeah, cool. Send me the link. Click the link. Well, the link gave Larry, or whoever the guy is, access to her laptop. So as she's in her dorm room, she has her laptop open 24/7. No harm, she's not doing anything wrong. Has no idea what's going on. So then Paul joins 2 weeks later. He's another separate human being. She's seen his face, she's seen him interact. She believes they're two separate individuals, which they were. And then she sees, and then Alondra, of course, she is nude in her dorm after a shower, as everybody is. So then Paul asks Alondra to Skype. Hey, and this is 2 weeks after that she's already been in this. So she kind of has trust for the site. She doesn't detect anything weird. So she goes onto Skype with him, which is kind of an older version of what we would probably use as Zoom today, or even a FaceTime. And then he's like, oh, I want to protect you. Larry's told me that he has nude images of you, so I'm going to help you. My mom works for the federal government, and we can get the videos and delete them off his computer. We'll just, Zoom right in there and get them taken care of. So she's like, I don't have any nude images.
Right.
So then when he flashes his computer screen and shows countless women, but shows her, and she's like, oh, shoot. That's my dorm, that's my body, but the face was removed from that initial video. The girls in the other videos that she saw looked miserable. And we went through hundreds of these, and every
Yes.
single girl was mad. You could tell they were so angry of what
Yes.
he was doing. And you're gonna hear a little bit of his voice, and it'll make you
Yeah.
upset as well. So, go ahead, T.
So he, as we mentioned earlier, was got a hold of her Facebook contact list. So, and this is the one where he was like, "Hey, I see who your chancellor is," naming the chancellor, naming administrators, knew her schedule. Because remember, he got her under the guise of, "You're the administrator, so what time can you get on?" "Well, I have class at this time and this time and this time," and then that's what he would use against her. So then in exchange for wiping Larry's computer, all he needed from her was nude videos or money.
So he's like, "Oh, I'll help you out, but you gotta
I'll
pay
help
up."
you.
Okay, so she is, Alondra's awesome. She has a
Yes.
fighting spirit, and she
Yes.
fought and cried for 2 hours begging him, like, "I don't wanna do this, just please leave me alone, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah." And he got really mad that she was crying, because this is what he does all day, every day, to multiple girls and women.
Yeah.
So then he's like, "Okay, watch this." So he starts becoming friends with
Became
her
friends with them all. This actually happened. He became friends with everybody she was friends with.
Including our chancellor. And the chancellor,
Yes.
if you don't know, is like the head, highest ranking of the university. So
Yes.
very, very intimidating, because she's scared to death to get kicked out of the university.
Yeah.
And then she was in a certain extracurricular sport. So guess what? He becomes friends with all of them.
Everyone in there.
Okay, so this is where I was like, okay, we got to get him live, and I want to answer all these questions because we really want to nail him at trial. You're always thinking as a detective the next step, like, what's going to be at trial? What's he going to say? Oh, they dated and blah, blah, blah. So like, no, we're going to get him live. So I went and hid under this little tiny desk, and
You
he
did.
made her show the laptop to prove no one was there. So I had a plan that I was going to go this way if she made, and then she was going to go slowly under the desk. He didn't make her look under the desk. So I got to be there with her. And then I would pass her little notes, like, ask him this, ask him that, so she was able to get those questions in. So during that, he showed all the folders, and he bragged about having hundreds of the videos, which he
Yes.
showed, and they were all distinct young ladies and young women, which later the FBI went through every single one to try to identify them.
Yes.
So it was a very big case, but very time consuming.
Yes.
Essentially, he says, "You're my property, I own you, you're like a Ferrari, you're beautiful,
Yes,
I'm
he
gonna this, I'm gonna that."
Mhm.
And I'm just like so upset underneath, because I had to deal with this guy for about 3 days before I took over her phone so she could have a break. And he was demanding 24/7.
Yes. Where are you? What are you doing?
And I'm like,
I know you have class.
Yes, I know
Send
you
me
have
the money.
class. And I was like, "I'm in class, like I can't." And he's like, "Well, send me a video of you touching your vagina." He didn't use that
Yeah.
word, but you can imagine.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my, I was so just, and this is me dealing with it. And she'd been
Yes.
doing it for 6 months.
Yes.
So when we got her, and she even told us later, she was just drained. She's like, "I don't even remember that chapter of my life.
Yes.
I didn't tell my best friend, I didn't tell my parents. I
Yes.
just, you guys were like, I just had to tell. I couldn't take it anymore." And she was just completely drained.
Yeah.
So the daily demand, get in the shower every day, 5 to 6 a.m. for an hour, film yourself
Yes.
nude.
Yep.
And doing things to her body by herself. Well, at our showers, they're communal bathrooms, so other females would be taking showers
Yeah.
at the same time. And he would escalate it. He'd be like, "No, the video's not good enough. You need to moan
Yes.
louder, louder, louder." She's like,
Yes.
I can't. There's someone taking a shower. Like, stop. And she
Mm-hmm.
had to. So he's never satisfied. And these guys will keep escalating. Some of them will even escalate if you work in the hospital setting. Some juveniles are forced to even put things inside of their bodies.
Yes.
Even like a knife. As disgusting and horrific as that is, it can happen. So this is him. 5 to 10 days out of the 6 months, for whatever reason, he let her have a break, or maybe he was busy, but essentially he put her on a very popular pornographic video website. And
With her full name.
full name on it.
Mhm.
So then he's like, "Okay, cool, you want it down? You're gonna pay me," which we'll get into that.
So he demanded her to pay him $200 to have the video removed. So again, escalating. Despite it being removed, her full name still remained under the deleted link. She had to send PayPal or make more videos. Paul claimed he had called UC Merced to see what the conduct sanction is for producing pornography. Because now he's saying, it's your image. They can't prove it's me, it's you. Paul assured Alondra that she would be expelled. He told her this is normally the time where other girls call the police, because my grandfather even works for the government.
We're going to listen to Paul. It's a 2-minute clip.
So what is it now? What am I supposed to do now?
Whatever I ask.
Like,
it can be anything. I'm going to just tell you to jump off the building. No, I'm not going to tell you that. That's stupid. But, I don't know. It's only a few things that I want out of women. Out of a girl, anyway. The only one thing I want out of a girl is a relationship. Shit, I don't want one of those. So, I got a schedule made up for you. This whole time I've been talking to you, it's been like 3 weeks. I got a schedule planned out for us for the next 5 years.
5-year plan.
I know that sounds crazy, right? 5 years. Get me out of college then. Okay, I'll just block you. You can block me, but all I have to do is make a phone call. When we're in college, it travels. That degree that you have, or you will get, it travels. That degree can be, like, gone like that. They can take it back. You think they can't, they really can. So, let me give you an opportunity. So, no more deals. That's out. You're stuck with me. But, this is what I say. What do you want to do? Do you want to not talk to me? You want to block me? That's fine. Or, be stuck with me. What's your decision?
You're
either
stuck
way, I'm
with me.
stuck with you. That made no sense.
So if you couldn't hear that, he says, I have a 5-year plan for you, and even in 5 years, you're going to be graduated, but at any time, that degree can be revoked. You can block me if you want, but I'm just going to call the university and get it revoked from when she was there. She actually believed it.
Yes.
So,
And even in the video, he's so nonchalant and casual. He's walking saying, well, what do you want to do? Yeah, I don't know. What are you going to do? And she's just terrified in the screen. And he's like, it's no big deal. You could try.
So he's taking away her options, block and call the police. Yeah, do those, see what happens. So it's that complete just mind control for somebody. Oh shoot, I got away. Okay, so we did search warrants to Skype, PayPal, Xbox Live. He would communicate via that. Google, Twitter, which is now X, Facebook. We took her to the Fresno FBI because with our state side, which is our district attorney's office, there was only a certain amount of time he could get. We believed him to be an adult at the time. So they said, hey, go to the FBI and see what they can do because it's across state lines and now with the money. So we did. And
we found out he was in Georgia.
Yep, found out he was in Georgia. They were fabulous. Everything just flowed perfect for the case. We got the warrant in a good time, which was surprising for us, and they went and hit the house in Georgia. He was home. They took multiple...
I thought we were going to Georgia,
yeah.
but we didn't go.
He took multiple computers, searched them. Of course, they found all the other victims and have tried to identify as many as they can, but he's 17. So what that meant is he was not prosecutable.
No.
So.
Yes.
Now we are going to check on Alondra. We're going to make a phone call to her.
Hello.
Hi, Alondra. Sergeant Gomes.
Hi.
Hi. You are live with an audience of people who are learning about your experience and what you've been through and what you've survived. So,
Okay.
Yep. I was wondering if you could talk about what you were going through mentally when this was happening to you, what you were thinking and feeling.
Okay. So mentally,
I feared for my life. I feared for my family's life because this person knew my address and my home address. They knew what school I was going to, the school's address. So I was really scared. I felt like I didn't tell anybody. I felt like I couldn't tell anybody because I felt embarrassed. But then at the same time, it was just a lot to deal with. Yeah, I really felt just really fearful, and more fearful of my family, that I put my family in danger.
And then can you talk about how it's impacted your life?
Yeah, so I don't trust people anymore. And it's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's good that I don't trust people. I don't take things for like face value anymore. I don't trust I trust actions more so than words. So if people tell me they're one way, but I pay attention to their actions more than anything, because I learned that people can be anybody they want to be. They can tell you anything they want to tell you. And yeah, that's how it's impacted me.
Does anybody have a certain question for Alondra? Okay, and then if you could,
I just want to
yeah.
tell her thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being so brave, and I'm just really proud of you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
I'll come back.
We'll have one more question. And Alondra, can you talk about kind of a life update of where you're at now?
Yeah, so I graduated from the university that I attended. I've been working in the airlines industry for a few years now. I'm actually in the process of applying to graduate programs, a doctorate program. So I'm doing well. I've put all that behind me. I'm so thankful that I had the help that I had at the university that I went to, because I don't know where I would have been today. But once I reached out, I had nothing to worry about ever again. And that's something I wanted to mention. Like, I want these people to know that they can get help immediately. They don't have to feel like it's all on them, or that they have to try to handle everything. Like, it's best to go and get help. There are resources out there. As soon as I reached out for help, is as soon as all my fears and my worries went away. I haven't had any issues with this person, and it's been, I don't know, maybe over 10 years now.
Awesome. We have one question for you.
It's actually two questions. The first question is, how did you realize how to reach out to the resource? And then what was the final straw that made you get the courage to actually do it?
Okay, Alondra, so what was the final straw or the courage to reach out to the resource, and how did you know where to reach out?
The final straw was this person became very, very demanding. Like, it started off slow, and then they just became demanding. Like, I was in class and they were just calling and texting and just trying to get my attention, threatening me. And I felt like I knew that there was a police station on campus. I honestly didn't know who to talk to. I just, when I went there, I just asked somebody if I could speak to them in private. And I spoke to them in private and told them what was going on. And then they directed me to go and speak to the officers. So I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I needed to speak to somebody and get advice on how to go to the next step.
Well, Alondra, this is Tamara, the advocate that did end up helping you. And I just want to also say that Sergeant Gomes is so good with doing hypotheticals. When we have survivors that are hesitant to report or don't want to work with law enforcement, I definitely take them into her office and say, let's just do a hypothetical. Let's see what would happen. and she's excellent at breaking down next steps and getting the survivor what they need without being pushy and not telling them, well, I'm gonna take this to the UC now. She's so excellent at doing that. So kudos to her. And also kudos to you, Alondra, for all the hard work and the perseverance and just standing still and holding your ground.
Thank you.
And we have one more question, huh?
Okay.
Hi, Alondra. Do you have any suggestions about what we can do to make this more helpful for students or people that are struggling with this, like a proactive approach to reaching across the aisle to students like you?
A proactive approach. I guess more awareness like this. I didn't realize that I was being or I could have been trafficked, or I didn't realize, like, I knew it was serious, but I didn't think it was that serious to put that word on it or that name. So just letting students know that these are the situations that can happen, just knowing, sorry. No, just putting out this information, just showing them the signs, like it can look like this. It's not necessarily so obvious in your face all the time. This person can end up being a friend, and then next you know, they are requesting you to do things, and then they're threatening you, and then so I guess just letting students know, and then also like having those spaces where they can go and speak to somebody.
Yes.
Those safe spaces where they feel comfortable, like they're not going to be in trouble for anything, and that they're really just getting help. They're not jeopardizing themselves, or they won't have their information just given out to everybody. This is going to be confidential.
Yes.
Any other questions for Miss Alondra? Okay, my dear. Well, I will talk to you soon, but thank you for speaking with us, and I'm proud of you as always.
Yes.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I just knew we were going to go to Georgia and do gangbusters and punch on the door. I was ready.
Okay, so we have 2 slides left, and then we're going to add some more time to our survivors. So this is the Central Coast. It's perfect here. It's beautiful. It's famous. There's nothing like this that happens, right? Negative. It doesn't discriminate. And this is across the country, big states, big towns, little cities. You name it, it's there. When you go into your phone, I don't know if you want to do it on your personal phone, but just know if you ever type in whatever city you're in and just the word escorts, you're going to get a lot of stuff that pops up, no matter where you're at in the country. It is what it is. So these stats are in no way a reflection of Santa Maria. I think Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County, I see them at trainings. I think they're awesome people. The fact that we're even holding this event is fabulous. We don't have these in Merced. And so I'm really proud of the work that you guys are doing. This, Ashton Kutcher, the movie star, he actually designed a platform called Spotlight, HT Spotlight. And what it is it's a giant database. It doesn't include every sex ad, but a lot of them. And it's uploaded daily, by the minute actually. And when you're looking for a survivor, so let's say Tamara's 14-year-old daughter goes missing, we put a picture of her. We do what we do with facial recognition. Oh, she has a sex ad posted. And we go and we can see where that's at, and there's a phone number. We'll pretend just for the sake, obviously knock on wood, but never. But let's say that's her. And I'm like, okay, there's the phone number, this is where she's at right now. Human trafficking is a transitory crime. So this ad could be posted in Santa Maria, but really she could respond to LA. Tomorrow she could be in Texas, the next day in Florida. Yes. You will see stuff, ads that are going all across the country because they literally do jump flights. And if you go online and hashtag catch a flight, not feelings, you will see pimping and pandering and human trafficking going on, RHGO, if you ever want to see it, which is real hoeing going on, and you will see pimps and you will see survivors on there. And it's so simple. We could get in a whole other day of what we do undercover, but you literally go to a pimp's page and you click like on something with money, and within seconds, they're like, what's up, beautiful? Hey, baby, where you at? And they want to pick you up within seconds. So when we do these operations, you could have a team of 500 cops. We could be booking these pimps all day long, and that's no lie. One training we were doing, we literally got out the phone and just started liking pimps' pictures. That's as simple as that. And it's just overwhelming. It's a nightmare because you can catch these predators, you want to get them, but you have to have the resources to do it. So today in the hotel, we went on Spotlight, January 22nd, 24, so exactly 1 year ago to today. And this doesn't mean that every single one of these is real. There are a lot of false ads, so just so you know that. But 13.1 thousand for Santa Maria. I did not do the other cities. I didn't do San Luis Obispo County. I just did Santa Maria. That doesn't mean that there's exactly 13.1 thousand, but can we agree there's going to be thousands? Yes. So just for our little city here in Santa Maria. So there will be photographs. It's just like a menu at a restaurant. This is what a commercial sex purchaser known as a John can go online and Google Santa Maria escort. And he's going to see lots of sex ads. And he's like, okay, I want to book a date with her. So he's going to text the number, hey, what's up? Meet me here, meet me there. There's no long conversation going on. It's very quick. In call or out call. She's going to come to the John or he's going to go to her. And law enforcement does a bunch of things behind the scenes with operations. And they study this backwards and forwards. And I haven't got to work with them, so I don't know, and I wouldn't reveal that in this setting. But the point is, it's that simple. That's as simple as it gets to book a date. Text the number, hey, cool, what are you looking for? An hour, this is what I charge, great, meet me here. They will lie, they'll verify that that's actually the car, that's actually the person. But essentially, it's as simple as going to these hotels. You can go to any private hotel in Santa Maria, really anywhere, at checkout time. Once you recognize the signs of human trafficking, you're gonna see pimps. Oh, there's the girl. Oh, there's another girl. Okay, and it's blatant, especially at airports. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you'll see, a pimp traveling with even 5-6 girls. One of them, even my ex-husband, he's like, oh my God, there's a pimp. Like, okay, calm down, it's fine. And I was like, oh, what do we do? And I was like, well, fortunately, we're in Florida right now. Like, what do you want, But he's like, this is fascinating. I was like, how'd you know it was him? He says, well, he's constantly monitoring them, but he's standing like from the wall over there. And then what really freaked him out, he wanted to run up and punch him in the face because the girls sat in the back of the plane. The pimp acted like he didn't know him and he sat in the front, but he stood up as all the girls walked by him. And then we were behind the girls. Once the last girl went and got her seat, and then he sat down. So he's like, this is crazy. So we get off, same thing. He's like, Carrie, they look really young. They look like they're like 13 years old. Like, I don't know what we should do. I go, it's everywhere. It literally is everywhere. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So we're going to turn it over to our survivors. But yes, it's here in the Central Coast. That's why we're having the meeting. Kudos to Santa Barbara County, to everybody.
Yes.
All of you, this is how change is made. Law enforcement, DA's office, all the nonprofits, you name it. You can't work this stuff on your own. You really can't. And I encourage you all to go home and talk to at least 5 people. Hey, this is what I heard. If you learn one thing, then that's how we can prevent stuff from happening. So human trafficking, they have different recruitment. This could be a whole week training. Just coming up with for 1 hour of content was a challenge for us, but that's why we have our experts. So I'd like to welcome our ladies up to the stage.
Yes, thank you, ladies.
We're not going to read every piece of it. They're much deserving of reading it and even their whole books, but this is their biographies. I encourage you to read them. Some of them have books. Like I said, Miss Des, I carry her book with me as my inspiration, and just, wow, I mean, even her sitting behind me, I'm trying not to be a fangirl. So at the end, we have Miss Jenna. If everybody could welcome her. Miss Brianna, Miss Kate, and Miss Beth. So I'm going to pass the microphone. We'll start with Jenna. The first question is, how did you, and we use the term the life, the game, and there's a lot more to that of pimping and pandering subculture, but how did your life go down the journey of human trafficking?
Yeah, so I wasn't a kid that was high risk to becoming a trafficking victim. I had vulnerabilities, but I was in a private Christian school in Southern California. I had 2 parents at home. My dad was a farmer, my mom was a teacher. I had 2 big sisters, and by the time I was 12, both of them were off at college, and I started playing competitive volleyball to follow in one of their footsteps and get a scholarship and play volleyball in college. And so I was on the track to be a student athlete on the collegiate level, and I met my trafficker in high school. He was 1 grade older than me, and he wasn't already a trafficker. And this is something he learned through other crimes. He graduated a year before me, and he lured me out with promises of a great life, to put it shortly. And I was very vulnerable. My parents were separating at the time, and he was kind of the getaway car. And so I moved in with him not knowing what he had planned for me. He married me, which you'll never hear me refer to him as my husband. He was my trafficker. This was another tactic he used to make me feel stuck. And within months, he was advertising me online and selling me out of the apartment that was 10 minutes from the school that I grew up in. And I spent a year being trafficked out of that apartment, except for the last time, and got away. And the recovery journey is really the most important part to discuss. I don't think we have enough time today, but that's the piece where I needed my community to step in. I needed the medical professionals, the law enforcement, all to step in, and they didn't. And I was not treated as a victim or with trauma-informed care. So it wasn't until 6 years later that I finally received help, psychologically and for damage to my body that was done. So this is the importance of educating not just our communities, but our first responders on how to identify and respond to trauma with victims with trauma-informed care.
The same question? Yes, ma'am. So for me, the very first time I was 13, I was, I guess you could say like a sheltered kid, and my mom, took very good care of us. She was a single mom of 5 kids, and so when I was 13, I decided I wanted to run away. And I remember leaving the house, and quickly I saw some boys that I knew from the neighborhood, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to go to a party?" And I was like, "Oh, I never go to parties. Without my family, right?" So I went with them and ended up finding out that I was going to be their party. And so 13 years old, they attempted to traffic me. Basically every car that came, I just, I was so terrified that I just cried, and so they left. But that really kind of made a big impression on me. And I remember when I left, I remembered every street as I was like getting, as they let me get away from them. And I remembered saying like, I'm gonna tell, the police about what happened. And when I did, I was pretty badly beaten up. They burned me with cigarettes. They really tortured me over about 3 days. And law enforcement didn't do anything at that time. And so for me, that just really made me feel worthless. So then I began running away more and more. And eventually, I started getting back on track. But then at 14, I met a girl. Previously, it was homeschooled. So at 14, I went to public school. And I met a girl who became my best friend. And she had this game that she would play. She would call chat lines, and she would start, at 30 and work her way down. And it was like, now I realize it's a pretty dangerous game, but she would start at 30, work her way down. And normally when she got under 18, people would hang up, right? And they would say like, no, call me when you're 18. So we would do this back and forth on the phone. And one day I decided to go on by myself. So I go on and, I played this game. We never got numbers, but on this day, I talked to a guy who said, "Oh, I'm looking for a girl to wine and dine." I said I was 18, But there was a lot of things that told him I was a child. And so the more I told him, the more things I told him, like, yeah, I'm still in high school, you know, my mom doesn't let me do this and that, the more interested he got. So I took his number, and then after a family altercation, he had tried for months to get me. He had tried to groom me, he was grooming me. He had told me, you know, every time I would call him and tell him my mom did this and that, he would say, oh yeah, you don't need your mom, like your mom doesn't love you, your family doesn't love you, and he always played the devil's advocate. And he said, you know, I would take care of you. And then eventually he became very controlling, like over the phone. We had never met up. We had only exchanged pictures. And so eventually I told him, you know what, I'm 16. And he said, oh, okay, that's fine. And he became more interested, which I thought was weird. But then I kind of put him to the back burner. And then eventually I got into a family altercation. Immediately I called him, told him about what happened, and he of course played devil's advocate and said, yeah, your family doesn't love you, which is what I was already feeling. And he drove about 2 hours to pick me up. I didn't know he was a trafficker at the time. For the first 2 months, he did everything he said. He bought me all these nice things. He took me to 5-star restaurants. He just made me feel like a princess, right? And then eventually he said, you know, I'm spending all this money on you. It's time for you to pay it back. I found out he was also married to a juvenile probation officer. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into that.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name's Kate, and I was exposed to the sex industry, I would say the first time at 5 years old. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother was a devout Christian, and we were in church every time the doors were open, and one night she got a phone call that my dad was at the bar drunk, and so she put me in the back of the car. It was before car seats and all of that. And so she drove down to the bar where he was to pick him up. And I just have this memory of the neon sign of the martini glass with the nude lady in it. And I didn't know at the time, but we were at a strip club. So my dad was also a jazz musician, and I just really admired him, and I wanted to grow up to be like him. So that same year, I witnessed his death. My mom and he got in a fight. She pushed him, and he died immediately of a cerebral hemorrhage. So that was at 5 years old. Then fast forward, many years later, I'm a lead singer in a band, and I want to come to LA to get into the music and film business. And I knew one person out here that was already doing that. I had worked with him in studios on the East Coast. And so I came out to meet up with him, to work with him, and I didn't know anybody else out here. And within 24 hours, I was sold for an 8-ball of cocaine. So that was my initial, my first time being trafficked. But through the course of 11 years after that, I would find myself with, counting him, 3 different traffickers. The second one was a lover boy pimp, someone who I thought was my boyfriend, who was also from another country, who thought that, you know, that's how he groomed me. He talked to me about, you're here without your family, I'm here without my family. You know, we have this in common, we can be there for each other. And he would come and see me and bring me very expensive gifts. And it seemed like he would treat me differently than anyone else had. And eventually, and I was living in hotels actually at the time, and so he was like, why don't you come and live with me? I have a big house, which he did, and you can have a car to drive. And so I did. I went to stay with him, and at that point he turned one of the rooms into a sex den, and he had clients come over, and he would force me to have sex with all of the clients that would show up. And then the third trafficker was actually a madam, a girl that I thought was a friend, and her clientele were all Hollywood celebrities. And she threatened me and promised me that I would never be in the industry if I didn't work for her. And I ended up working for her for a while, and with all of them, there are threats, different types of threats. But as they were talking earlier, there's threats to harm your family, to go after them, and I just believed that it was possible. And so it was, I say, and it's like quicksand. It's really hard to get out of, and you find yourself, survivor's experience is betrayal first. They experience betrayal, then they experience powerlessness, and then they find themselves feeling ambivalent. They love and hate the people that are hurting them, but they don't know what else to do, so they feel hopeless. So that's my answer.
Well, my story is just a little bit different. So I was trafficked by a family member. So what do you do when you hear all of these ladies and all the different experiences, but when it happens in your home, it's something totally different, because this is where the individuals in your home are supposed to love you. They're supposed to protect you. They're supposed to keep you safe. But what if the trafficker's your mother? The person who gave birth to you? Then it's a totally different situation. That is my trafficker. She's my mom. She is, I always get the question, yes, she's still alive today. I always get the question, no, we don't have a relationship. I do respect her because God says to. Do I deal with her? Absolutely not. My story, again, my mom trafficked me. She trafficked me to the highest bidder. She told me let me take it a little bit back. So while I was in my mother's womb, I experienced generational curses. While I was in my mother's womb, there was a family member out of Oakland who told my mom and my grandmother that you don't need a nappy-head kid, abort her, or give her to me so I can take care of her. Well, I'm here today to say that obviously that didn't happen. But then, what I say to that is, the devil knew what I was going to be in a time such as this. So there was no way I was going anywhere. My story, my stats say I'm supposed to be dead, in jail, a prostitute, or a drug addict. What I will say is I'm educated. I have 3 master's degrees. I own my own business. I am a high school counselor, and I have a nonprofit that aids at-risk youth and human trafficking victims and survivors. Unfortunately, the reason I became a high school counselor is because that is the first person that ever asked me what was wrong in high school, in elementary school, in kindergarten, and in junior high. Not one teacher ever asked what was wrong. I did have a teacher, however, say, take your little nappy head self in the back. I did have teachers tell me to get out their classroom. I did have teachers say, you're not going to amount to anything. So I decided to, later in life, become a high school teacher. Well, I started in elementary, but I decided to go into education because I always want a student to feel that they are heard, that they are appreciated, that they are loved, and adults aren't always right. So that's what I decided to do. Again, I told you guys my stats. Not only was my mother my trafficker, but my uncle was. There was the generational curses. My uncle, I don't want to cuss because I don't know who's Christian up in here. Okay. But my uncle, there was the molestation. I was with my uncle multiple times. My mom ended up going to jail because she was a prostitute when I was young. And she decided to ask my uncle to keep us. Mind you, why she did that, I don't know, because my uncle had his 2 sons taken away from him because he was molesting them. So he came to stay with us, all my mom could think about. And what you guys have to understand is if a person is on drugs or anything like that, They're not thinking about the love, the care, or anything. What they're thinking about is the drugs. They're thinking about how they can get their next high, how they can get their next fix, how they can help this. So I won't say that it was her fault completely, because at the end of the day, when I look back on my mom witnessed my grandmother's murder. So that was the spiral and the downfall for everything that my family started going through. My uncle told me when he came to keep us that either you let me have sex with you every single night, or I will have sex with all your younger brothers and sisters. So me as a protector, guess what I did? I protected them. I didn't feel worthy, as one of the ladies said. I wasn't worth anything anyway. I had been sold as a child many, many times. I had been touched. The first time I actually had intercourse was 7 years old. That was my mother's boyfriend. He beat her though. I witnessed him throw a refrigerator on her. I witnessed him beat her. I witnessed him buy the drugs for her and give them to her and make sure she took them. So I have to say, it's not all her fault, but you could have been a better person. You could have been a better parent. So for that, I do hold you accountable. I know there's a lot of questions, so that's just a little bit about my story. What I will tell you guys is, I'd rather you be wrong than right. So if you see something, say something.
Thank you. And now I would like you to talk about the thoughts that are going on in your head, and what does that look like for each of you? The mental power and control and the manipulation that these traffickers have, and what does that look like inside? What are the thoughts, and how do you stay alive during it? How did you survive it?
So a few things. I mean, the first night I was sold, I didn't know what was going to happen. And after it happened, I looked down the hallway, and the man that had just raped me handed him money. And I knew that I was a victim of rape. I didn't understand what the money meant, because I grew up with the same movies and media as everyone else. So prostitution is what the movie Pretty Woman looks like, and trafficking is that word we never really hear in that documentary of a kid chained to a radiator in another country. So neither were what my situation looked like, so what was happening to me. And there was 2 phone calls that I wanted to make that night. The first one was to my mom. All I wanted was my mom. And the second one I wanted to make was to law enforcement. And by this point, my trafficker had done such a good job of isolating me and separating me from my family and support system, and really making me believe that there was nowhere else for me. And so one of the things he did was he got a restraining order against my dad. So what that really made me feel like I couldn't go home. And the other thing was, by this point, I had been arrested. And the police officer that put the handcuffs on me, he looked at my trafficker and said, "Why would you want to be with a girl like her?" And for me, that was the lowest point so far, because that was like, I'm the bad guy. And everything that he told me about law enforcement is true. That they will not protect me, that they will punish me. And when I was sitting in the jail cell, I was crying a lot. And they sent a female officer in to talk to me, which would have been a good opportunity to intervene. But just with what he said, I wasn't going to speak. And then as months went on, there was about halfway through that year, he opened the front door to the apartment. And he said, "Leave, Jenna. If you want out so bad and you hate me so much, go." And I started to walk out, and then I stopped. And I went, "Where?" And I really didn't know, as a young 18-year-old in so much trauma, in constant survival mode, I didn't think I had any options. And that's exactly why he said that. And also one of the things, my book was just published, and I write about this in more depth. I had a weight trainer as I was training to play volleyball, and we constantly worked on mental toughness and sports psychology. And that, I share how much that helped me survive my trafficking. Because you often hear about like rape survivors, they'll almost be in another place when the actual physical act is happening. And I did that to survive, but I also constantly, like one of the things, like I was in his garage lifting weights, and then we would sit down for like a half hour and he'd have me visualize serving the perfect volleyball and having the perfect game and go through all these visualizations, right? And so I would visualize my future. Maybe someday I can get out of this. I have no idea now. I have no idea how I'm gonna get away and what my life will look like. But visualizing it helped me survive. And then, going back to the one point real quick, when he opened the front door of the apartment and I felt like I had nowhere to go. We as adults that are healthy and understand and are educated on this, we know what the options are, right? In the moment, my thought process was, I'm now a high school dropout. I now have a criminal record. I had all this trauma that was undealt with. I have a branding that he put on me. I'm really skinny. I have various stages of bruising. I have no goals. What am I gonna do? That's what I'm thinking about as a victim. And I'll just share this last piece that's important. When I did get away from him, I went to an urgent care seeking help. And I was 100 pounds, my hair was falling out, I had my branding, various stages of bruising, acting erratic. All the nurses and doctors were talking around me, and nobody was talking to me. What I needed in that moment was somebody to say, Jenna, what happened to you? And then to follow that up with, this is what the process will look like. Because I didn't know. So what happens if I speak? I'm worried about me. You want to get the bad guy, you want to do whatever, but I'm worried about what's going to happen to me. And so if they explain, this is what law enforcement will do, this is what the court system will do, we have social workers and victim advocates for you, we have safe houses, you might not go play at Long Beach State, but hey, you can go play volleyball at junior college, I would have been like, sign me up. Because all I wanted was to go back to the life I had before he came in and interrupted it. So that goes back to the importance of communities and first responders identifying victims.
So I'm going to share two perspectives. I also had a little sister named Blair who was trafficked after she was 23 years old, and she got a job at a local casino where she met her trafficker. And unfortunately, she had lost her life in 2022 after returning to a childlike state and walked onto the freeway from the effects of what happened to her. So I'll start off with Blair, what went through Blair's mind, because I remember Blair coming to me, and I remember it like it was yesterday, us sitting on the couch. We were very, very close. And I remember her coming to me and saying, what is human trafficking? And I was like, you know what I do. You know what human trafficking is. She's like, no. I know what it is for kids. I know that you were trafficked when you were a kid, but what is it for when you're an adult? And I told her it's forced fraud or coercion, and then I started explaining what that meant, and I said, why are you asking me this? And she said, because I'm being trafficked. And at first I thought it was like a sick joke, and realized, no, she was telling the truth. And I like to share this with people because I was already doing this work. I was sharing my story everywhere, and I was telling people how it can happen to anybody. But even myself forgot that it can happen to my own family, and it did. And so for Blair, she was very open in what was going on with her and what she was thinking. And I have a daughter. I actually have 3 kids, but my sister was really close to my daughter, who was about 3 or 4 at the time. And, with traffickers, you tend to tell them everything because they befriend you. And it was like a Romeo trafficking situation where she thought this was her boyfriend, the man of her dreams, the man she had always waited for, right? And so she would tell him everything. She would tell him all about my my daughter. She would tell him, all about the businesses I had. He knew everything about it. And so he would use that and say, if you ever try to leave, I'm going to do something to her. And so she had that fear going through her head. So that's kind of what was happening with Blair, is that she constantly feared everything. And at one point, she did try to get away when she had a little window, but then this guy came back, and she was too scared. She believed every lie that he told her. For me, I had a lot going through my head as well. So initially, I also had a Romeo trafficking situation where I thought, this is the man of my dreams. He's, buying me everything. He's treating me like a princess. He's doing everything he said he would do. For about the first 2 months, he did everything he said he would do. He took me to all these nice places, bought me clothes. You know, my mom was a single mom, so she did her best, but she couldn't, splurge on us like, this man was doing. And so eventually in that time I was with him, I got arrested. And the charges got dropped, but because I got arrested for, he actually lived on the track, which is like where girls walk, right? And so they thought I was doing that, but I actually wasn't then. And I wish somebody would have really intervened then, because I wouldn't have ended up getting trafficked by him. But I got arrested, they dropped the charges, but because I was a minor, I still ended up being in juvenile hall for 2 months. Mind you, at the same time, his wife, I didn't know at the time, also was working in that same juvenile hall that I was being held in. I went back home and I was like, I called him and I said, I'm gonna do the right thing. Like I'm on probation now. I have to do the right thing. I'm gonna, basically I'll call you when I'm 18. I'll call you once I'll call you when I'm off probation. They put an ankle monitor on me because my mom was concerned about, what was happening because I kept running away, and she knew about the incident when I was 13. And she was trying to get me into like a program. And so I, was naive at this time. And this guy told me, oh no, you're coming home today. And I was like, no. And he's like, no, you're coming home today or I'm gonna come in and get you. So at that time I felt fear because, yes, reality is I could have just went and told my mom, but I was afraid of this man coming to the house and then getting in trouble because my mom's like, why is this man here? You're messing up, So he cut off my ankle monitor. So then I was afraid to go back to juvenile hall. He took me back to the Bay Area. I was originally from Sacramento, and that's when everything changed. It completely changed. As soon as I got there, that's when he told me, I've been spending all this money on you for all these months. We've been in all these hotels, and now it's time for you to pay me back, essentially. He told me what I was gonna do and put me online to the highest bidder, and I remember he took me to San Francisco, to the person who won, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And he told me, you're gonna get out one way or another. You're either gonna get out willingly, you're gonna leave in a stretcher or a body bag. So which choice is it? So I then still refused, and he beat me up for the first time, which then became very routine. I thought the guy would be like, oh no, I don't, I had blood in my hair, I was all messed up, and the guy acted like nothing ever happened and just put the money and proceeded to do what he did. So then eventually, I tried to leave several times, but then eventually I developed like Stockholm syndrome where, I had, like Kate mentioned, I had a love for him, but then I also had a fear for him. And anytime he would call me, I would literally run out because if he heard anybody in the background, I would get beat. If I even went to the grocery store and there was like a young, he didn't have to be young. If there was a male and I looked him in the eyes, I would get beat. So I would get beat for pretty much everything. So I would run out and I would talk to him. There was a network of traffickers, his family, and they were always watching me. He had a tracking app on my phone, so it was very difficult to get away. Eventually, before all of this, I was a straight A student. I was on track to graduate very early. And I had started several small businesses from a young age, but I completely forgot about this. He told me I was worth nothing. He told me, all these lies, right? And I began to believe them. But then what started happening is I started talking to the other women on the streets, because eventually he said I wasn't busy enough. So I had all these buyers buying me online, but he's like, oh, in between time, basically you have to walk the streets as well. So he would have me doing both. And so I started talking to people, and some are as young as 12. I think the youngest girl was 12. And then I talked to a lady, she was like in her 60s. And I noticed we all had the same story. Everybody was like, oh, I met this guy, and he promised me all these things and he put me out here. But I'm not gonna be out here forever. But when I talked to somebody in her 60s, and I was 17 and a half at the time, I was like, oh, if I don't do something, I'm gonna be out here forever. And I didn't want that life. Slowly my dreams and my aspirations and the businesses I started finally slowly coming back. And so, I just tried several times to get away, and eventually he got arrested, and I just ran.
I think so many of the stories are so similar, and I've heard that too. Body bag, make your choice. Which way? I'll choose to talk about when I was with the pimp, the second one.
he would beat me often, and there was fear to keep me working for him. He had a driver that was his bodyguard, basically, and he would take me to the strip clubs to work and pick me up afterwards and tell me that, you know, the grooming process is like, we're in this together, we're gonna make money together, we're gonna have a better life together, but that soon changes. And then it becomes, you know, you better have my money and bring me my money, and there is no partnership once he gets what he wants, and he gets, you know, there's different levels of breaking a girl, and when they get you to the place where they want you, then they know they have you, and that you have to do what they say. The final time that I got away from him, he had beaten me pretty badly, and he had told the bodyguard to actually kill me. He had brought other girls into the house, and they were working for him too. And, you know, even though I had seen everything and was living that life, I still, in my mind, had this idea that we were a couple. And, you know, I was really mad at him for having other girls, and so that's why he beat me up and told the guy just to dispose of me and get rid of me. Somehow the driver felt compassion on me. I mean, I was bloody and I was crying and in the car, and he decided just to let me out. I was in LA, just out in the street, like in Compton. He just let me out of the car, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. It was just what I was wearing. And so I ended up going into a hotel and just basically crying to the person at the front desk and asking them if they could just give me a room for the night and promising them that I'd come back and pay them the next day. And so they did, and the next day I had to go back to work at the strip club to make the money to come back and pay them. And so that's what I mean. It was just a cycle of, felt like it was never going to end. You know, I would say also there were drugs involved. I mean, you need to numb out from a lifestyle like this. I did. And so there were a lot of drugs that kept me just going through the motions every day, just one more day of this, and thinking I still had so much hope that I was going to get my big break. And I did get a couple of things happen for me. I got to choreograph a couple of films, and I was actually got to do some work. I got to dance at Paramount Studios on a dance show, and so some things did come out, but they were almost like the carrot that just kept me hanging in there, like the bigger thing is going to happen. You know, and I just realized that it wasn't, and we'll talk about how the exit was later. So that was that.
I was told to help the family by my mom. This is how you're going to help the family. I was in the system. I'm from Bakersfield. And I lived in a facility out there for 8.5 months, unfortunately, because nobody wants a big kid, and I was a teenager. If you're in the system, they want the little kids because the little kids listen more, so they say. So I was tossed around in foster homes and group homes and all of that. But as they said earlier, you love the person who does these things to you. I continued to run away from Jameson and go back to my mom. Run away, go back. Run away, go back. She would take me right back to Jameson because she wanted the drugs. I remember one day we were outside playing, and she told me that you need to start helping the family. You need to pay your way. And there were so many guys coming in and out of the house. It was our very first apartment ever in life. I'll never forget the address, 713 I Street in Bakersfield, California. I'll never forget that address because that's where she started having guys come in, and they saw that I was developing. So they started propositioning my mother for, you know, to sell me and all that thing. We can give you drugs, we can give you this. We don't have to give you any money. So she did, and then she said, well, there's a real way you need to start helping. So I remember her taking me in the house, having me take a shower, putting perfume on me, and walking me down the street from the high school that I would eventually go to and the high school that I actually went back to help students. She took me down the street. There, at this store, there's an alleyway. And in that alleyway is where the drug dealers and everything would meet to pick me up. And they would take me to different hotels in Bakersfield to do whatever they wanted me to do to them, and they would do what they did to me. My mom also told me that she taught me how to be an amazing thief, because she would sell our food stamps. She would do all of that. So I'm kind of old, y'all. So back then, welfare and food stamps and everything was on the 1st and the 15th. So I would miss school every single 1st and 15th, and for days at a time, because I would have to take care of my brothers and sisters. There's 7 of us total. I am the oldest of 7. But what she did tell me is, you need to go get some rice. You need to go get some eggs. How are you guys gonna eat? Because I gotta go. So she taught me how to walk a path to the grocery store. She taught me how to wear stuff under a skirt, wear different things under a skirt to be able to stuff things. And she even went further to teach me how to steal clothing for the different drug dealers. Because if I stole clothing for their girlfriends, she would get the drugs. And that's how she was being paid, to have me do all these different things. In that, I started believing what my traffickers were saying to me. One time a guy told me, I'll be nothing more than a mattress for men to lay on. And I believed that. I was 100 pounds wet. And so when he told me that, trying to get out of it, because back then there was no help. I'll be 53 this month. So back then there was no help. So me believing that, the only way I'll ever be able to get out of this life is if either she gets killed or I decide to take myself out of it. So I started without any therapy. I started going to school. That's where these degrees came in. I was like, okay, I got my AA. I can't be a mattress. Then I went and got my BA because I still felt like a mattress. I still felt used. So I went and got the bachelor's degree. Well, that didn't help because I still felt like a mattress. Okay, maybe if I get a master's degree, but I'm dumb. So if I get a master's degree, maybe I'll feel different. That's why I got 3 master's degrees. I didn't go to school because it was the education. I went to school because maybe I'll be something better. In that, I realized the master's degrees and these degrees didn't mean anything. I needed counseling. So it's crazy. I started counseling during COVID. So that's how long it took me to even admit anything. I started counseling during COVID. I wrote my first book during COVID. I was scared and in that, I was afraid that my city would reject me. Even after all of this, my city will reject me. If they knew my story, because I'm a social butterfly, if they knew my story, they're gonna be like, oh God, that lady's crazy. Why would she talk about this? Why would she do this? Why would she do that? So I was scared. I was told to write my book almost 30 years ago. And I was like, I ain't telling these people my story. They ain't gonna be judging me. You know, the book came about during COVID. And I think that was the first step to my healing. I'll tell everybody, counseling is good. It is amazing because it started helping me realize, you know what, there is something more to just this. Now I use those degrees to help people. I will say I turned my pain to purpose. I do want to do one thing. I'm going to start at this table. Can you 3 guys raise your hand? Now, sir, you right here at this table, can you raise your hand? That's 4 guys. Can 2 of you guys raise your hand at this table? 1 in 6 males are trafficking victims. So I started over here, so you're a traffic victim. Now, can you two ladies raise your hand at the end table? Can you raise your hand? Beautiful hair for you. 1 in 3 women or children, females, are trafficking victims. You're a trafficking victim. I do that because I want you guys to see, look how many people are in this room. Look how many males are in this room. Look how many females are in this room. You're sitting among trafficked victims. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, I want to talk about how you escaped or got out or transitioned, whatever words come to you for your unique story, and then about your healing journey.
The last time I was sold was the scariest. I was when I experienced a beating and was raped through the night. And not long after that, I had a phone call with one of my big sisters. And they assumed I was in a domestic violence. They did not know that I was being trafficked. But the conversation turned to getting away from him. And she said something on that phone call that didn't occur to me until she said it, which was, you know, Jenna, you can always come home. And so then I kind of started in my young mind planning my escape, right? What am I going to do with my life now? Where would I go? And I thought the one thing that I needed was my GED. Like, at least I would be some kind of step in the right direction. And I had a teacher, my 6th grade teacher, Miss Markley, who was my favorite teacher. She, of course, cared about my academic performance, but really appreciated being the kid that stood up for kids that were bullied, cared more about my character and integrity. And she reached out to me through cards over the years. When I was dropped out of high school, she was the only one that I heard from. And she always wrote in those cards, I'm here for you, and I love you. And so I felt like I could reach out to her. And so I would meet with her and study and pass my GED, which while getting that while being trafficked, felt like getting my PhD. And so then I met with my dad, my trafficker, his mom, and his stepdad. And I'd make a quick note, you know, just like I wasn't a victim, somebody that you might picture to become a victim, he also wasn't somebody that you might picture to become a trafficker. And he wasn't already a trafficker when we met and when he would even learn me out of school. This is something he later learned. And, you know, he was, his mom had a successful business in the community. His biological father was a CHP officer. His stepdad was a pastor and a chief in the Navy. And so both of us not pictured in any idea to become part of this crime. And I met with them, and all I told them was that he was growing marijuana and selling it out of the apartment, and I want a divorce. And they were flabbergasted, and I just remember thinking, if you only knew what was really happening. But no idea how to speak up, and that's when I had my visit to the urgent care. Not long after that, I moved home with my dad, and the urgent care visit I told you about. But when I left that urgent care with nobody asking questions, I just kind of went, I guess nobody cares, I guess I'll just move on with my life, which led to more trauma. And then I'm gonna really shorten the story down. I eventually remarried a Marine. We got stationed to Quantico Marine Base in Virginia. And while I was pregnant with our son, I found out my trafficker died, which led me to go to a therapist, but I wasn't honest, right? Like, I kind of got skated by with the story. Oh, when I was 18, I was married and he was abusive, and nobody ever dug deeper. I found out he died, which really is what led me to therapy, trying to understand, trying to process my feelings and my anger I had around that. It felt like he got away with it. But eventually I just really tried to move on with my life the best I could. I was living in a new state across the country, starting a new life, happy. We had our son. And then it wasn't until 2 years after, so 6 years after being trafficked, I had a routine doctor's appointment. And I had been to the doctor plenty of times. And anytime I've had any kind of pelvic exam, I had pretty much a panic attack, but nobody ever said anything about it, so I just assumed that was normal until this doctor. And she pulled me into her office and she said, Jenna, have you ever been sexually abused? And I couldn't quite wrap my head around it because when I went to the doctors, when I got away with him looking the way I did, which I had previously explained, nobody said anything. And now I appeared as a happy, healthy mom, military wife. How does she know? And it wasn't like I just said, oh, when I was 18, oh, this is what happened to me, help. But by identifying me and asking me questions, she really stirred up my trauma. So over the next few months, I had become so good at blocking it, really blocking it down and pretending to be okay. And it came to a point where I couldn't, and I had a breakdown. And I went to an emergency room and I said, I'm not depressed, I'm not suicidal, I just need some help. And they described this place, which was a psychiatric hospital. And I hesitated, but eventually agreed to go. But what happened next was they brought in this gurney, and my husband and my son, who was 2 at the time, were there, and they laid me on it, and they strapped me to this gurney. And what I felt like in that moment was the same way I felt in the jail cell, which was, I'm the bad one, I'm the one that had to be put away, I'm causing trouble. And when I got there, I recognized that it was just as scary as I imagined it would be. And I thought to myself, do whatever you have to do to get the hell out of here. And so I did. I went to every appointment they had, every therapy. I wrote in my notebook like a good girl and said all the things I thought they wanted me to say. And I met with the psychiatrist. And I still to this day remember everything about him. He had thick gray hair parted on the side, a large pointy nose, and he had tassels on his shoes. And the reason I remember all these details about him is because I sat there studying him, looking at him, thinking, are you the person that's gonna finally help me? And he pulled out this binder and it had my name on it and had all these notes and papers about me. And he said, Jenna, I just got off the plane and I've been reading about you and you're doing really well and you're very high functioning and I think you're ready to go home and you can come to our outpatient care program. And then he pulled out a pad and wrote me prescriptions. And I was sent home without disclosing any of my trauma. And so the way that my undiagnosed, still, complex PTSD showed up at that time was nightmares. And I had a nightmare very real, which was very real. I'm gonna speed this up a little so everybody has time, but it led to an overdose, and then I was back into the inpatient care. And I remember the first day back, there was a woman there, and I had heard some of the traumas that she had experienced, which were similar to mine from my first visit in group therapies. And I sat there watching her, and she like had her arms wrapped around her, and she was like rocking. And it was like nobody was there. And I remember thinking, if I don't get this out of me, I'm gonna end up like her or dead. And statistics show that a trafficking victim can have a 7-year lifespan. And I was 6 years out of the life, but still facing death. And so the next therapy that day we had was art therapy. And she said, draw what you're afraid of, and you can keep it in your binder, or you can share with everyone. And I stood up with my piece of paper with stick figure men, and I said, when I was 18, I was married and he had men come to the apartment to rape me, and I don't know what that means, but I'm afraid. And it was like, truth will set you free in a psychiatric hospital with barbed wire around it that I could not leave on my own free will. That was my real first taste of freedom. And I'll share this last little piece. When my trauma was coming out, I wasn't the little girl with the teddy bear that you wanted to pick up and hold. I was 18-year-old, angry, abused Jenna again. And so I had this amazing case manager, and I'd walk in his office, and he was a little redheaded guy with all these degrees all over his walls. And I'd walk in there, and I'd throw my hands up, and I'd cuss and yell, and I'd say, you don't know how to help me. You don't know how bad it was. There's nothing you can do for me. And I'm going to lose my husband and my son, and I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. And the whole time I was watching him out of the corner of my eye. I was aware of my behavior, I just didn't care. And all I ever saw from him, whether it was his body language, his facial expressions, and the words that he chose very carefully to say to me, was that he truly, genuinely cared about me as a human being. Even before I was as a patient, just as a human being. And it wasn't that first time that I just started to open up to him, but I'd walk in there day after day, throw my temper tantrum, say all these things that he wasn't gonna do. And eventually, he said, Jenna, do you wanna make a plan together? And by that point, I did wanna make a plan with him, and not only Did I trust him? I respected him. And so it's really, I mean, I was away from my trafficker, but my true healing didn't happen until people started to step in and show me that they cared, explain to me that what I had was complex PTSD and what I had survived was human trafficking, and was willing to sit and be patient with me and meet me where I was at so I could start my healing journey.
So I mentioned that I began talking to other women that were out there on the streets, and they began sharing their stories that were very similar to mine, which started to kind of wake me up a little bit. I also started hearing about different stories on the news. I don't know what was going on. Just everywhere I would look, I would hear different stories about women who were being trafficked, who were losing their life. I was like, oh. Then there was a girl that I had met, and she had only been trafficked for about 2 months. At this point, it's almost 2 years that I've been with this guy. So she had only been trafficked for 2 months, and then she was killed and her body was found on the freeway. And I thought, like, if that could happen to her in 2 months, like, my time could be almost up. My trafficker also tried to take my life. As I mentioned, he was married to a juvenile probation officer, and I call it my 24 hours of terror. So he had a drug addiction, and thank God he wouldn't allow me to do drugs, because that would have just been a whole nother part of a struggle I would have had to overcome. But he had a drug addiction, and eventually he actually started letting me carry my own money. But I knew better than to touch it, and by this time I was so brainwashed, there was no way I would ever touch it. Well, on this one day, the day before, he smoked up all his money, right? Used up all the money. And his wife, she had diabetes, and then he showed up at the house that I convinced him to let me move out because I was already trying to distance myself. I convinced him to let me move into another house. So he showed up at the house, busted through the door, and said, "Where's the money? I need money. She needs meds," and was kind of manic. And I said, "You used it yesterday." And he didn't believe this, so he dragged me out the house, took me to the track, and knocked me out right there in front of everybody. I ended up losing consciousness, and I was kind of going in and out of consciousness. And I remember he picked me up, and he put me in the back of, well, I don't remember him picking me up, but at some point he must have picked me up, put me in the back of his car, and he's driving around, he's driving, the wife's in the passenger, and I'm laying in the back, and I can't open my eyes, and we were in the Bay Area. And they thought I was dead, so they were like, where should we put her body? I don't think she's breathing. And I just remember praying, I'm like, God, please let me wake up. Like, if you get me out of this, then I promise I will leave, because it's gonna kill me. And so, yeah, they were just driving around, trying to figure out what to do with me, and then eventually they laid me somewhere, then I came to, and then I woke up again, or passed out again and woke up somewhere else, and they left. The next day he contacted me, he didn't know if I was dead or alive. He just left me there on the street in the wee hours in the morning, and he's like, "Oh, you're alive." And then he proceeded to terrorize me again. He tied me up, he threw me downstairs, he just terrorized me for about 24 hours. And so after that, I realized he's gonna kill me. So I'm either gonna get away or die trying, because I can't live this life. I can't keep doing this every day. This is not what I want. And again, my dreams were coming back, and yeah. So he went to jail, and the first time I was really scared because, as I mentioned, he had everybody watching me. But the second time he went to jail, I was like, this is my time, I gotta go. So I ended up, I had met a friend, I ended up going to that friend's house, and I just hid out for months. And then eventually I was able to return home, and because he had cut off my ankle monitor almost 2 years prior, I had a warrant, so I cleared that up. I was also on track at that time, before all this, to graduate early. And so that was very important to me. I got invited to a human trafficking event. I had no clue what human trafficking was. This was back in 2012, at the start of people starting to really talk about it. And so I got invited to this human trafficking event, and there was an organization called Love Never Fails running it. And I remember, like Jim mentioned, I was very angry at that time. At this time now I'm 18, and I was so angry, I was grumpy. I was like, I don't want to be here, this is stupid. I don't know why somebody invited me to this stupid trafficking event. But it ended up changing my life. And so I left the event, and then I started thinking, I want to finish, high school. I didn't want to get my GED. It was very important that I got my diploma to me. And so I started Googling organizations, and that organization, Love Never Fails, popped up to help me get my diploma. So I got involved with them, and then within a month, I was able to graduate. And then they helped me just start putting the pieces of my life back together. There was so much that I had to relearn. Being in a quiet room was really awkward for me. I had to relearn how to be quote unquote normal. Like things that we all take for granted, right? Were so hard for me. And so they just started helping me with that, helping me with life skills. At this time, I was very shy. I would have never done something like this. I would stutter all the time. I would never look at people in the eyes. I would only look down. I was very, very quiet. And I remember them asking me, "Can you speak?" I was like, "Do you see me? Do you see how I talk?" And I said, I didn't know how to repay them. So I agreed to speak. I was like, I guess I could try. So I remember going to an event and I spoke and I stuttered the whole time, and everybody, I got like standing ovations. I was like, I guess they didn't hear it, but okay. So I kept doing it, and I started finding my healing through that. The more I spoke, the more I learned about myself, and I remember there were things that I had suppressed, and there were parts of my story that I would start to remember, and I'm like, oh wow. And then there was one time I got invited to a school, and there was a little boy. I started doing human trafficking training in the school. And there was a little boy, he was in 4th grade. We were teaching 5th graders, but somehow he ended up in our class. And so I remember him being in there, and he heard my story, and then he came up to me after. And he said, "I wasn't even supposed to be in here, but I snuck in this class." I was like, oh, okay. And he said, my parents are trying to train me to be a pimp. My dad's a pimp, my uncles are all pimps, but because of your story, I'm never gonna do that to a woman. And so when I heard that, I learned that my story had power, and that, if it even helped one person, that it was all worth it. So the healing journey you guys asked about, it's never ending. There's still stuff I learned. When my sister passed, so I thought I healed. I went to counseling, I spoke, I did all these things. And then when my sister passed, I hit rock bottom. And I started learning all these other things that I hadn't dealt with, right? So I had to deal with those things. And then the biggest way it had hindered me is relationships with men, right? I wanted to be married. I wanted a family, but I didn't trust people. And even learning just how to be around a man, like I had to study, how do you date? How do you talk to a man? Like what's normal, right? I was groomed to be over-sexualized, but I don't want to be like that. I'm a Christian woman now, like how do I do this? And so I had to relearn everything. And yeah, I guess I finally figured it out because last month my fiance proposed, so.
How did it end? The question? Yes, ma'am. Okay. So I was arrested. I was leaving the strip club, and I got arrested for car theft. And I had been set up and was driving a stolen car that I did not know about. And so the police pulled me over, and they called in backup. I've been pulled over for tickets, but never for car theft. I had no idea. So they told me, get out of the car and lay down in the street. I was still dressed from my club night, and so I had to lay down in the street. They had other cars come and surround me, and they pulled out their guns because they didn't know what was going to happen. And so I was arrested and taken to Civil Brand at the time, Women's Correctional Facility. And it was in there that I sobered up and just started to remember who I was and think about, this is not what I wanted to do with my life. This is not who I was created to be. I still didn't know how I was going to get out. That was the big hook that always kept me in, is not knowing how to get out. And the one person that I could call to help me, the attorney that I could call, was actually a client. So I just felt stuck. I didn't know what to do. And of course he did help me, but with promises, if there was a debt to pay afterwards. But so after spending some time there, he didn't get me out right away. I had to stay there for a while. When I got out, I realized that I just can't go back to this life. I can't do it anymore. I had seen women that were aging and still doing that work, and I just thought, I can't be that. And it was on my 30th birthday, and I went actually back into the club because I was broke again. I was stuck. And so I went back in thinking this is it, final. And it was on my 30th birthday, and as they were pulling my music up and getting ready for me to come out on my set, I just looked at my name and I just heard the music, and I just said, this is ridiculous. It was like somebody had turned the lights on because now I was sober. And I just saw everything for what it was. And I just said, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. And I told the DJ, take my name off, I'm leaving. He was like, but you'll be back. And I was like, no. And I gave all my clothes away to the girls in the dressing room and told them, they were like, no, you'll be back, because everybody comes back. And I said, no, I'm not gonna do it. And I walked out. And I don't know how I made it from then to the next year, how I actually, it was all a blur, you know, it's like, leaving the industry and, you know, escaping and leaving are completely two different things. Like, I escaped it, but I hadn't left, and you know, I still had all the trauma. They're talking about complex PTSD. I'm laughing at you guys saying you were 18, you were angry at 18. I'm like, let's try 40 and being angry. For every 1 year you're in the industry, it's a 5-year recovery. So it's a very long process. And I started a program for other survivors years down the road after starting to realize I felt called to do something. I was like, what about all the girls that I left behind in the clubs? Are they okay? Are they alive? What happened? Some had kids. And so I decided I wanted to start a program, and I ended up, this is years down the road, I ended up throwing a big fundraiser out of my own pocket, and somebody invited the mayor of my city to come, and I said, I need 2 homes, or I need a home. I said, I need a home to help women who've been trafficked. And about a month later, they called me and they said, will you take 4? And I said, nope, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm not taking 4. I know that's trouble, so I'm not doing it. Just give me 1. And then they actually called me again and said, we want you to take at least 2. So I took 2 reluctantly because I didn't have a donor base or anything. And so now today we have the 2 homes. One is for girls 18 and up who are single if they don't have custody of their children. And the other is for moms, also 18 and up, girls who are escaping their trafficker that are pregnant or that have little children from their traffickers, because that's the next generation that's going to be trafficked. And so we need to step out and do something about that. I'm still struggling with the donor base, I'm still struggling with all of that, but I just feel like when you're called to do something, you can't not do it. You have to say yes and show up. And so everything that you're talking about, like sitting still in the room, I deal with that with these women that are in my program every single day. You know, we have phases of the program and they don't want to sit still. And I don't know, I guess I didn't want to sit still either. I kept myself busy, but I was out there getting into more trouble. And I'm just so grateful that they have a safe place to sit still and try to get help and move on. So I think that's all I want to say. Thank you all for listening.
Well, mine was a little different. So, with trafficking comes a lot of different things. It comes the bad relationships and all of that, the domestic violence. So, I stopped the trafficking because, you know, I was 18 now. I ended up selling myself sometimes because I still needed to make some money. I had started having kids. I have 5 grown kids. Thank you, God, they're grown. But I had 5 grown kids, and I'm like, okay, how am I gonna take care of them and everything? Yes, my mom's not selling me anymore, but what am I supposed to do? So I did all these odds and end types things. I was selling myself. Then I ended up stopping, and I was like, I don't want to be in this anymore. I ended up getting into church. And I think what my epiphany was when my pastor told me, You're not responsible for what you do to people. You're not responsible for what people do to you. You're only responsible for what you do to people. So I was like, okay, these people did all these things to me, but what am I going to do to change that? So then I started going to school, and I got into the counseling. And the only reason I went to counseling is because it was a requirement of the program. Because I was like, these people don't know nothing. They got degrees, but they don't know nothing. And so I remember my instructor told me you have to do 10 sessions. And I was like, oh Lord, here we go. I told her, I said, I'm not saying nothing to that lady. She's going to have to pull everything up out of me. The day I went, the very first session, I rung the doorbell, I went in, I sat down, waited for her to come down this long poltergeist hallway, and then she starts, Odessa? She leads me back, and I'm like, ooh, this hallway is long. You know, and she takes me to the back, and my whole thing was, I'm not sitting in her chair, because if you sit in their chair, if you sit on the couch, that means something. That couch is dangerous. You know, so I said, I'm going to be defiant. So when I get in her room, she says, would you like to sit on the couch? I said, no, absolutely not. She said, well, do you want to sit in my chair? Whoa, I didn't expect that. I could sit in your chair? And she said, yeah, go ahead and sit down. So I sat down. And all this lady did was ask me to spell my name, say my name. And I cried the whole session. That's when I realized, okay, I am not healed. I have a lot going on. I need this counseling. And we only had to do 10 sessions. But I actually did 2.5 years. I actually ended up liking it. One other thing that I will say is, in my culture, and I would say this is probably any culture, and this is for parents, I was always told, don't tell what goes on in my household. So I never told what happened to me. I didn't tell anyone what was going on with me until I was in my 20s, almost 30s. I never told. Now when we say that, we can still say it, but now when we say these things to our children or our grandchildren, because I have 10 of those, when we say these things, we need to be more mindful and give an explanation on what we're saying. If we say don't tell what goes on in your household, you don't tell that dad didn't take out the trash. You don't tell that maybe mom cooked chicken but dad wanted a steak. You don't tell that. But if someone is touching you have to tell your kids to tell these things. If someone looks at them and makes them feel weird, if someone brushes up against them, they should be able to come to you or whoever it is and tell that information. I never told because I was scared. I didn't want to get taken away from my mom because even though I felt she didn't love me, she loved me. And if I told, the system would take me away. So I never told. So if you say that, make sure you give that full explanation on what you're not telling and what you should tell. I will say that this topic is very, very heavy, and I've seen some like whoas in the audience, you know. You think it's heavy for you. We're the survivors here, right? So it's a very heavy topic, so I will always say, make sure you guys practice self-care for yourselves. Make sure we all debrief, right? We all do something that helps us after these type of events. But make sure you guys do as well. Because this is a lot to talk about, it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to take home with you when you go home this evening. Now,
stand up to start commitment to what we're going to do moving forward. We're going to get loud about these topics. We're going to get loud about sextortion, cyberbullying, stalking, human trafficking, exploitation of any kind. Now, our ladies are going to remain seated, and I want you to clap and yell and hoop and holler for them as a thank you. I want to thank Rotary and thank all of our sponsors one more time. Thank you all for being here.
Wow. After that, that's quite something. We just are so grateful to all four of you for your stories and your courage and your information that you shared. It's so valuable, the messages you gave us about how to deal with your friends and family that are going through this. And there's nothing as valuable as the survivor stories, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you very much. So while they're changing positions, I'd just like to mention that attendees will be getting some links. Terry Lee will be sending out some links to you with information about how to get their books or how to support some of their foundations or their businesses so that they can take some benefit from all the sharing they did for us. And we encourage you all to look that up and try to support them as much as you can. We'd also like at this time to thank Carrie and Tamika because your presentation was wonderful too and very, very helpful and I think very informative. And we appreciate you moderating it well. So Maria Barriga, is she here? Oh, there she is. She has just a few words to share with us about why these kinds of events are so important. Thank you, Maria.
Good afternoon, I'm Maria Barriga. I'm an officer with the California Highway Patrol here in Santa Maria. This is the third forum that I have attended, and I just want to share a little bit about where we're going as a department and how this made such a huge difference for us. So in attending, I became aware, I started networking, we brought some training to the Central Coast, trained 90 officers in 2 days from different agencies, 3 different counties, district attorneys from 2 different counties, and pushing forward, right, bringing awareness, networking, trying to make a difference. One of our attendees at this training had a visit from our commissioner, so the head of the Highway Patrol. And she mentioned how important it was to receive human trafficking training. Well, this went up to headquarters, and now I sit on a committee where we're preparing to actually train all 7,000 uniformed officers in California. So I heard before, one person can make a difference. If you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to work, if you're willing to network, reach out to other agencies, nonprofits, people in your community, share the message, right? Sergeant Gold said, talk to 5 people. That's where we start. This started in Santa Maria and it's changed all of the Department of the California Patrol within the state. So I truly think that we can all make a difference. I think it's wonderful that the Rotary Club has put this together. I hope they continue to do it every year and that we get more and more people to attend and become aware of what's going on in our state with human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So you probably are wondering what else is going on in the county in regard to human trafficking, and this last session is to help make you aware of that. And so we'd like to invite Megan Reinschild up to the podium and Jeff Schaefer. Megan, as you can see from your program, is the chair of the Santa Barbara County Human Trafficking Task Force and the director of the Victim Witness Program out of the DA's office. And Jeff is on the leadership team as the of the strategic plan for the Human Trafficking Task Force, and we're really pleased to have them sharing their information today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
She turned the mic, there's a switch on it.
Okay.
There you go, someone turned it off.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you, and it's really my honor to get the opportunity to speak to you about what our office is doing, the district attorney's office, and what our community is doing. But first, I just want to take a moment to thank these women for speaking to all of you. And I'm going to steal a line from a survivor that I heard speak during this last year, and I think it's important to say these words, which is, when you tell the story of the mountain that you have climbed, your words could become a page in someone else's survival guide. And I so appreciate you telling such an authentic story about the most personal things that have happened to you. And that's how we all learn, and that's how I have learned in this journey. So I manage the Human Trafficking Task Force, but I don't do it alone. I do it with a community of partners that are amazing. And I'm looking out into the room, I see some law enforcement partners, I see our North County Rape Crisis partners, I saw Craig Bonner walk in. Our law enforcement partners, we talked a lot about gatekeepers and the way in which you meet up with law enforcement as survivors. And what I will say, and I know I don't have a lot of time, is when we started the Human Trafficking Task Force back in 2013, one of the things I was very mindful of, being in a law enforcement organization but running the Victim Witness Assistance Program, was the constant narrative and conversations we were having with our law enforcement partners about how we meet up with victims and survivors of crime and how we integrate their stories into the experience that they may have in the criminal justice system, and to be, to have some sensibility about that. And so we did, what we're doing here is we brought experts, we brought people that knew a hell of a lot more than I ever did about the issue of human trafficking, and we brought them into our community from all over the state and all over the country, and we said, talk to us about how we do better to recognize and identify human trafficking survivors, and what kinds of systems of care can we put in place. So that was, over 10 years ago, and we've come a long way. We have a long way to go. We're constantly just going to talk about our human trafficking work with some of our nonprofit partners in our police community, but we're always looking for opportunities, and we're always looking for partnerships. The CHP partnership is fairly new, and how important is that patrol out on the streets are looking for identifying human trafficking. And by the way, what we have learned all along is that victims and survivors were in front of us. We just didn't know what we were looking for, because oftentimes it shows up as domestic violence, it shows up as a rape, it shows up as child molest, it shows up as drug addiction. And so we started looking to our partners and changing the paradigm and changing the narrative about what we're actually looking for. The other thing is this idea of trauma-informed care. And so meeting individuals where they are. And so when someone, you were sharing about your stories relative to engagement with law enforcement, and I consider us really fortunate to have amazing law enforcement partners that have shared in this conversation. But if that first meetup with law enforcement is negative, we're done. And so one of the things that we really try to do with our Human Trafficking Task Force is meld the advocacy alongside the law enforcement response, so that we have an on-call system where law enforcement can call out an advocate. We work very closely with our rape crisis partners. If someone's real hesitant to engage, then rape crisis will step in and have a different set of rules around confidentiality. But I think that meetup, that first opportunity is so pivotal. And it is what our model is to try to provide a roadmap for a person who wants to take that next step. And also realizing that we're not the end-all be-all. Law enforcement is not the end-all be-all. We really rely on our partners. And I can name so many, but the gatekeeping is pivotal. Someone said it earlier, I think it was Dessa, if you see something, say something. Our community does have sensibility about this. Child welfare is a huge partner in this work. The statistics around the incidence of child abuse, child molest, foster care, the percentages of individuals that become trafficked and exploited are very high. In other words, a trafficking victim often has a lot of vulnerabilities, which includes child molest, foster care, incarcerated parents. So that's what we're looking for amongst our systems. It's not just, oh, are you trafficked? Because most times youth are not going to know, they're not going to say, I'm a trafficking victim, please help me. We're looking for all kinds of different indicators. And I say that because of our partnerships, child welfare, juvenile probation, law enforcement, rape crisis centers. So I so appreciate you listening, and there's so much to say, but I think the important thing is thank you for being here and listening and being part of the solution. And the authenticity and the storytelling will move us in a direction in the learning. And I've learned so much from the survivors that I've worked with, and I appreciate each one of you for being here.
We'll make it bigger.
Thank you. Thank you as well. It's an honor to be in the same room with you and hear your stories. And I hope that the work we're doing in our county will honor your stories and work on the prevention and early intervention side. That's kind of our priorities. My name is Joe Shaker. I work at King Causes. I also work with the Strategic Alliance to Fight Exploitation, and my job kind of is to help Megan in any way that I can in our task force with our leadership team to bring all the supports we can to the county to help the work that she's trying to accomplish and the DA's office is trying to accomplish. I've done 20 years or so working with people on the streets, working with what we would call our chronically homeless population, people that have been homeless 10, 17, 20 years, trying to work them through the same system, get them the care that they need, and get them into housing and support. So when I joined the task force and I learned about what was happening to young boys and girls and men and women in our community, I knew at some point I was going to leave that role and move more into a coordination role and kind of fight this fight and help prevent human trafficking in our county. And so our mantra of the Kingdom Causes is we want to see a Santa Barbara County where no one is bought or sold. And if we think about the resources and the people that are just in this room, the connections, the nonprofits, the businesses, the faith communities, the resources, the funding potential that's just here in this room, can make a tremendous dent in the work that we're trying to do in our county to get on the side of this where less boys and girls are being trafficked or experiencing all the vulnerabilities that we're talking about here today. So that's kind of our work. So I just want to highlight a few things for you, just so you can know, in my mind, one of the ways to kind of work through this in our own heart and souls is to be like we can do something. Right? We all want to do something. We come to these events, we get the information, but what at the end of the day can we actually do and be a part of it? So that's kind of what I want to cover real quickly. So I think first of all, that idea of a first responder ID tool is very important to help. It's been worked on with the law enforcement. We've developed it for our medical providers. We just did a training with 70, this year we did a training with 70 medical providers just to walk them through. I believe there's some Dignity Health friends here with the State Haven model. They have a tremendous model and they've helped us with this training and these tools. But 80% of survivors interact with our medical system. So those providers need to have the eyes, and not only just the eyes to see, but as was mentioned, they need to have the wherewithal to how do I actually begin to communicate with this individual in a loving, compassionate way so this person wants to come back and get help when the time's right. So also working with Anne and the wonderful North County Red Crisis team in Lompoc. They do tremendous work. We're trying to do more work related to getting into the schools and helping educate teachers and counselors. Also on how to identify it and then what to do about it in a healthy way. Where do they take that information? How do they do a suspected child abuse report? All these kind of things are very essential for what we're trying to do. So we're trying to get on the front end of that. So I mentioned on the slide that SAFE, which is kind of our fundraising arm, SAFE, our Strategic Alliance to Fight Exploitation, has raised some funding just to allow Anne and her team to do a little bit more school training. And we're going to continue to try to increase the capacity for that, for the prevention. We learned in Lompoc that there were 176 women in Lompoc in 2023 experiencing homelessness, with 50% self-identifying as fleeing domestic violence, with huge risks of human trafficking that we know is a reality. So what we've done in Lompoc is, well, the best way to end that is to end women experiencing homelessness. So how do we get all of our partners so that there's not a single woman experiencing homelessness in Lompoc that would even be available for this to happen to them? So we're partnering with Anne, and we're partnering with my commission for that as well. Before I go there, the other thing is we learned that Noah's Anchorage in Santa Barbara City between January and May this year worked with 13 individuals, girls under the age of 18 that were confirmed to be sex trafficked. So that's just one neighborhood in one part of our county, and so we're working to pay for a case manager for Noah's Anchorage to follow those stories through the system and make sure that all those girls get the care that they need to, and that we intervene earlier in their lives to get them the help that they need. The last picture I want to talk about a little bit is just to let you know that we believe the younger generation also needs to get engaged and involved and with us. Since we piloted this new thing in Santa Barbara City with San Marcos High. There's a Students for Survivors Club on campus. And on February 8th, should you be in Santa Barbara, they're going to put on a trapeze awareness event. So they're all learning to do the trapeze together and invite the community together to learn about the issue. But on campus, what they're doing is they're taking a lens for all the girls and boys on their kids on their campus who might be experiencing loneliness or might need a place of love, purpose, and belonging, so they don't turn to exploitation. They have awareness now of what happens on social media and helping their friends not post certain things. So they're talking about that on campus, and we want to replicate that in that area. So last thing on the slide, I think, is if Santa Maria would like kind of a pilot, we have a Lompoc Neighborhood Action Collaborative and the Santa Barbara State Neighborhood Action Collaborative, where we're bringing together all of the cross-sector local partners to actually work directly in the neighborhoods to make change. So if Santa Maria would also want us to develop something like that here locally, I am more than willing to come up and meet with businesses, faith communities, nonprofits, whoever, and try to develop a once-a-month team to look at what's happening in Santa Maria, what might be needed more in Santa Maria. So I hope that's, even though it's been difficult to hear the stories, at the same time I want to thank the DA's office and Megan and the task force and all the partners that are in the room and supporting SAFE to say that, hey, there's stuff we can do together to change the story and the narrative in Santa Barbara County. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's the time that we're just about ready to start our reception, and we wanted to just give you a few notes. Again, there'll be a link to some of the information that you can, where you can order books and products from the survivors. We'd like to thank our survivors again, and our speakers for the messages that they've left on our hearts for today. They'll be there a long time, and hopefully they will generate lots of positive action out of this event. We also are proud as Rotary Santa Maria South and our partners to have been able to do some things with the law enforcement supportive training and support of some software and other things that help in this regard, and our partners with the DA's office and having the ability to find out that there are some of these unmet needs in our community. We greatly thank our sponsors.